Hello, everybody. It is the Dark Conservatarian. I'm starting this episode of Strike Force earlier because last minute I had got invited to a birthday party for one of my cousins. And it starts at 4, so that means that I have to start this a lot earlier. Whereas I normally start this at 2:30 or 3 or something like that, but not today. So the big news in today is, second here. Big news in today is Judge Kavanaugh, or potential Judge Kavanaugh, being attempted to be appointed by President Trump. But first, before we actually get into that part, I was just wanted to review the economic status of Trump's economy so far, because I had come across this one video that was posted by a friend of mine on Facebook that was from Fox News talking about how great the Trump economy was, and I found that quite odd. So I have an article here from the Brookings Institute. At least I think the full name is the Brookings Institute, but the website just goes by brookings.edu. And so I think Brookings is like a fairly objective website. So let's get an actual objective opinion rather than an outlet that is likely going to suck Trump's dick. All right. And as it opens up, this article here, Trump lags behind his predecessors on economic growth. So already it strikes bad for Fox News and their praising of Trump. In recent months, President Trump has tweeted that economic growth under his presidency is better than it has been in many decades. The economy is raging at an all-time high and is set to get even better. What's up, best man?
I just saw the link and I decided to join. So, just quickly catch me up to speed. What's this about?
Okay, the main theme of this episode is going to be about Brett Kavanaugh being appointed by Donald Trump.
Oh, to the Supreme Court?
Yes,
Okay.
Supreme Court, or I guess I should rephrase it as Brett Kavanaugh being the nominee from Trump. But anyway, first I want to review the economy very quickly. Reading Brookings' article. What was you gonna say?
Well, yeah, I agree that he's not necessarily appointed. He's nominated. I just saw a poll that when on that other tab you were on saying should illegal immigrants get Social Security benefits? Oh, you're on that tab right now. Yeah, I'd of course. Yeah, if I was to vote on that, I'd vote no.
Heck no.
Because I mean, it's not because I'm just using some common sense. It's because I'm an evil, racist, fascist.
It's because you're a self-hating. It's because you're a self-hating beaner, is why.
Yes, Darkon. That's the reason. Okay.
So funny that the writer of this article is Robert Shapiro. It makes me wonder. I wonder if he's related at all to Ben.
I will laugh. That would be funny, yeah. But honestly, with my kind of stance with Trump's economy, I'm afraid that it could get better. But my problem is some of his actions I think are going to cause it to just fucking tank.
How's it going, JJ? Yeah, I mean that's a whole lot of the suspicion is with a whole bunch of true blue conservatives. Like they're thinking that his institution of tariffs will cripple the economy considerably. I mean that's kind of what I'm concerned about as well. I mean we could just end up with another Hoover that can be the predecessor for another, who knows, FDR or something like that.
I fucking hope not. But here, the thing is with a lot of the actions, his protectionism, which did cost 1,000 jobs in the Midwest, which is a very big deal in that region of the country. That was something I had a huge problem with, and I'm afraid that this trade war, which he denies is going on. I'm afraid that trade war is just gonna balloon, and then it's gonna boom, it's like a boom, it's gonna increase, and then it's gonna just crash.
Damn, JJ.
What happened?
Nothing. I'm gonna let you read the live chat yourself. But in the meantime,
you should delete his comment. I'm just saying you should delete that. I'd be afraid that could actually get
Okay, yeah, I probably should. But you okay? So you saw it. That's all that's important. But anyway, Sorry, JJ, but I did not want to expose you like that or let you get exposed. But anyway, continuing on with the article. While some hyperbole is a matter of opinion, Trump's claim that his stewardship of the economy puts his predecessors to shame can be checked by public information that is readily available to all. In fact, the data show that compared to his predecessors, Trump's record so far falls somewhere between unremarkable and substandard. Moreover, other economic data suggests that the current expansion will likely wind down before his term ends, and his boasting will ring hollow once the economy slips into recession.
Yeah, yeah. Like some economies have done well, like with Reagan, and then in the '90s it went into a recession under George H.W. Bush. That's why I saw a very interesting video against Keynesian economics. The guy said if you change one detail, it could probably work. But yeah, I'll probably send you that video later if you want.
Sure. Also, there was okay. So Keynes is like the leftist economist, and Hayek was the right-wing economist. Wasn't that how it was?
Um,
Yeah,
I think I wouldn't. I don't know if I would call Keynes a leftist, but I would say he was definitely not as right wing as Hayek. You know,
right.
but
Now,
yeah,
I actually read a comment from somebody once, talking about Keynes and saying that Keynes was not just an outright yes, let's intervene into the economy constantly. He's just varying in how his policies should be. Like, only intervene when necessary or something like that. Like his economic philosophy isn't as black and white as some people might put it out to be. But that's a little bit of a side tangent.
yeah.
It is commonly said that a president deserves some credit or blame for the economy's performance only after he's been in about 6 months. Yeah, I think that is the general opinion. On
Yeah,
those
give it 6 months.
On those terms, let's measure Trump's words against the record for real GDP growth over the last 3 quarters, July 2017 through March 2018. Over those quarters, GDP has grown at an annual rate of 2.6%. Comparing that pace to his last 9 predecessors over comparable periods in their first terms. Trump here bests the 4 presidents who faced recessions in their first year in office: Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, and Richard Nixon.
Yeah, actually, that's pretty true. With when Nixon took office, LBJ's Vietnam War policy, along with his Great Society, they clashed like oil and water, or red and orange, and the economy was extremely weak when Nixon took office, but unemployment wasn't like skyrocketing. Ronald Reagan, it was due to the oil crisis that had been a dominating issue in the 70s, and Barack Obama, it was due to the 2008 recession. How did the recession affect you personally, Dark? I mean, did it affect your worldview?
Not necessarily my worldview. Actually, it wouldn't be till much later, till like in the 2010s, that my worldview would be affected regarding economics and whatnot. The most that got affected right around the banking and housing crisis was that I could not participate in Lego robotics in 1 year, and it was 2007 actually. So it wasn't quite in the heat of it. Like in 2008 was when people primarily felt it, but 2007 was when I personally could say that I felt it.
Yeah, I got 2 links for you in the group chat if we run out of articles.
Okay.
But trust me, they're pretty interesting and very thought provoking. But yeah, I will say though that actually, let's continue. I just lost what I was going to say. But yeah, so it says Trump's other 5 predecessors came to office as he did during economic expansions. Along them, he's tied for last place. Real GDP growth under Trump over the 3 quarters has lagged. Bill Clinton, Jimmy Carter, and Lyndon Johnson, along with John Kennedy, tied with George H.W. Bush, as the data in the following table show. So then it shows John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, Richard Nixon, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump.
Right. And I just want to
Yeah.
point out, as far as GDP grows, this is like talking about early economic records of presidents, and
Yeah.
so it kind of makes sense that Reagan's GDP growth would be kind of lax within the first few years, even not even necessarily the first few months, because Carter kind of left off with bad inflation rates for Reagan, which ended up him having to deal with a recession.
Yeah.
But ultimately, he would bounce back from that in the mid and later parts of his term.
Yeah, that's pretty true. That's what people should keep into consideration. That's the problem when people are trying to use statistics is they sometimes fail to see that, like the wider
Big picture.
picture. Yeah, the big picture, read in between the lines or check the circumstances of when they entered office and how it changed over their term in office and when they left and for their successor and so on and so forth.
Right.
Like all of those predecessors, Trump promised to reform regulation and boost business investment, which his protectionism I don't think is going to help, because such measures can stimulate faster growth. Moreover, if the new investments focus on productivity, boosting equipment, they also can help raise people's incomes. Through all of last year, Trump and his advisors insisted that business investment would soar once he cut onerous regulations and Congress slashed the corporate tax rate, which I'm not sure really how I feel about the cutting the corporate tax rate in all honesty. But I mean, like my philosophy is let's just give tax cuts to like working, middle class, and poor families. I'm not saying let's pull a Bernie Sanders and just raise the corporate tax rate till they all leave the country. But I also do propose a clawback policy. So like if you're wanting to offshore, any tax cut you got is rescinded.
Right. I mean, my thing about corporate tax is an income and personal income tax rates and so on and so forth is the more you raise them, or if you keep them at the high rate, you're going to keep on driving away plausible big time taxpayers from your country, and you're gonna have you're gonna have other competing nations competing for um, those taxpayers, and then it's just going to increase their revenue instead of that revenue being put in our treasuries, All right. So Trump devoted much of his first 6 months in office to rolling back regulations and much of the next months on his single major legislative achievement, sharp reduction in taxes, which I have to say that in principle, I approve of Trump in this area. But let's listen to the Brookings, what they had to say this affected the country in practice. The table above shows what has happened to business investment generally and to new investments in equipment over the last 3 quarters. Again, compared to the results in comparable periods under his predecessors, on overall business investment, Trump's record again beats the 4 presidents who faced recessions in their first year in office: Obama, Bush 2, Reagan, and Nixon, plus Bush 1. Hardly a heavy lift. Yeah, this is kind of making this is kind of a commentary from the article itself, saying basically that's not a very high bar, Trump. So good for you, but sorry, just not a very big achievement. And trails his 4 other predecessors: Clinton, Carter, LBJ, and JFK. On investment and equipment, the comparisons are the same, except that here he trails Obama as well, the 4 other Democratic presidents since 1960.
Yeah.
Many economists, myself included, pointed out that Trump's tax and regulatory changes would likely have little effect. What's up, Aspie?
Nothing much. Just playing Kingdom Hearts here. What you guys talking about?
Economics.
I got a question for you. Are you playing that on the computer or something?
No, I'm playing it on my PS4.
Okay, never mind. Otherwise, I was gonna see if you could like screen share it, and we were gonna have like a gameplay in the background while we were reading all this. So
yeah,
anyway.
I'm playing I'm gonna be playing Chain of Memories. I hate this game so much. You need a card to attack.
Why are you playing the game if you hate it?
I'm trying. I want to see the storyline. I mean, once you get it down, it's not so bad. But it's just you got to plan out everything.
Right.
And it's you got to allocate your resources. Good.
The capitalists are exploiting it, Aspie. You transphobic bigot.
No, speaking of trans, Gemini was being a real dick to Lapis in the later part of Aspie's stream last night.
What happened?
It's a bit of a long story, but he was just being an overall a douche to Lapis. Like,
Could you
He
send me
was.
can you send me a timestamp of this? Because I want to see this shit.
It's near the end. You can find it as soon as Lapis comes in. You'll find it easy. It's near the end.
Oh fuck.
okay.
She'll probably tell me later. But anyway, let's continue. The truth is that U.S. companies had been able to borrow the funds to invest for virtually nothing for a decade, adjusting for inflation. So there was little holding them back from investing here, except a shortage of attractive opportunities, and Trump's changes didn't alter that reality in any meaningful way. All right.
So I'll go ahead and read it. Trump's middling record on GDP and investment raises the question of how much longer the current expansion, now just 2 months shy of entering its 10th year, can last. Developed economies move in business cycles, and so they weaken eventually as a matter of course. That's where the United States is today. This late in any economic expansion, the pool of available workers for new jobs is modest. Most attractive investment opportunities have been taken, and any pent-up consumer demand for large, durable purchases has been exhausted. Yeah. I mean that's kind of that's kind of expected to happen. I mean, you're gonna have those downfalls. It's a bit of a roller coaster, I would say, when it comes to an economy trying to grow.
I hate the 100-acre wood level in Kingdom Hearts. It's
100-acre. Is that ripping off of Winnie the Pooh or something?
Yeah, no, it is Winnie the Pooh, exactly.
Oh.
You got.
I will say though, I do love like a certain part of the stream where I just wrote something fucked up. Like in the group chat, and fucking Zoe's freaking the fuck out. That was funny.
Yeah, that was funny. Wasn't that the joke where you said her sight, if she must be Asian because her sight is narrow as?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah.
So anyway, let me close down Twitter because I don't really need it. No economist, much less any politician, has a test or technique to accurately predict the onset of a recession. One important reason is that a recession usually requires a shock that tips a weakening economy into a contraction. In recent decades, those shocks have come from sudden increases in oil prices, a precipitous housing decline, and aggressive interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve. Yeah, abolish the Fed, like end the Fed.
Yeah. I will say though that do you believe that like it's like supply and demand is the issue in the housing decline, Darkon?
I haven't looked much into housing economics, to be quite honest.
Okay.
I mean, it's not really my forte. Sorry.
No worries.
So Trump has to be So Trump has to bet his reelection hopes not only on somehow getting a pass from the Mueller investigation, he also will have to trust that the Fed doesn't double down on raising interest rates, which last I checked, the president has little to no control on the Federal Reserve, so he'd be screwed if they decided to do that. That we can avoid a trade war and a crisis involving Korea, Syria, or Iran. That I will say he has more control over. So if he ends us up in a trade war, that would be more of his own fault.
Yeah, but it would. I wouldn't be. I think I think some people have actually declared the conflict of trade with China as a trade war. Let me Google that really quickly.
And that some other yet unforeseen development doesn't tip the balance. That was me reading the last bit of that sentence, and that's the last of the article. So, yeah.
Okay, so it's called a trade dispute, not necessarily a trade war. Okay, but yeah, this is yeah. What do you think of putting tariffs on intellectual property?
Intellectual property? You mean art and stuff like that?
Yeah, or something like that. Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sure that intellectual property is like a real term and whatnot, but it just seems like a fancy term. I don't know. I mean, I first heard of the term from Christy Winters, and she was like using that to define what Bering was copywriting from Total Drama Island. You know, the bear picture.
The bear character, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was thinking to myself, she's just trying to make herself sound smart. Just call it art. Like, how hard is that? But yeah, it seems to be an official term, and I don't know. I mean, I would know very little on that. Tariffs on intellectual property. I mean, how can you put a tariff on an intellectual piece of property? I mean, you probably have to like prevent the person who made the piece of intellectual property, prevent them from taking a picture of it in the first place. I mean, otherwise, if they take a picture of it and they post that picture, well, then it's going to be too late at that point because there will have somebody can already like copy that piece of intellectual property, that piece of art or whatever else have you, and claim it as their own. And you have no control over it because somebody across the ocean has already copied it. So you can't tariff it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems kind of pointless, I would say, unless you don't take a picture at all of that piece of art or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, excuse me if I'm rambling, but
No, I get you.
kind of speaking slightly off of ignorance here.
No worries. After my S-Man live, I kind of had like I kind of felt tired from speaking all day. Then I did that debate with Zoe on capital punishment, so I was almost I almost lost my voice that day.
So
yeah.
This from the Daily Caller. Report, if confirmed, Kavanaugh, I've heard it pronounced Kavanaugh, but I'm going to pronounce it Kavanaugh because it's, I don't know, it's spelled like laugh in the last few letters here, will be the second most conservative judge on the court. The second most conservative judge on the court. I would be kind of skeptical of that, honestly, because I watched 2 Cents today, excuse me, Today with 2 Cents. Have you ever watched that show, S-Man?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's his weekly news rundown, and he was talking about the possibility of Brett Kavanaugh becoming judge, and talking about how liberals are complaining about him. But he was commenting of how essentially that he's not that conservative, not that right-leaning, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I would be kind of skeptical of the rating that Daily Caller is giving him. The race is on Wait, what? The race is on pin down the political.
Oh.
Do you mean the race is on to pin down the political views of Judge Brett Kavanaugh? Typo. Donald Trump's nominee for the open Supreme Court seat left by recently retired Judge Anthony Kennedy. The former Bush campaign official and White House staffer has spent the last dozen years on the D.C. District Court and has a lengthy record for review. Kavanaugh's conservative bona fides have been critiqued by some conservatives. Okay, yeah, that kind of shows it right there, and staunchly defended by others. However, Axios has used the ideological ranking system of a group of political professors at Washington University to measure where Kavanaugh would land on the political spectrum of the court, where he confirmed, according to the Axios study. This article isn't really long, and it doesn't really actually dive into the beliefs of Kavanaugh. It just says he's the second most conservative judge based off of this study or whatever, but it doesn't reveal the details of it and the beliefs. So
yeah, I actually found an article which said that they thought Anthony Kennedy was the closest to a libertarian Supreme Court justice that we've ever had.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Brett Kavanaugh, President Trump's nominee to replace Justice Anthony Kennedy on the Supreme Court, would have the second most conservative score, 0.693 on the bench if confirmed, next to Justice Clarence Thomas, 0.725, per a measure that scores judges on a liberal-conservative spectrum. An analyst by political scientist Lee Epstein, Andrew D. Martin, and Kevin Quinn places judges on an ideological spectrum called the judicial common space. Conservative justices receive scores from 0 to none, liberal justices from -1 to 0.
Mm-hmm.
The findings show that given the model designed by the academics, Kavanaugh would be the second most conservative justice on the court. Only rock-ribbed conservative Clarence Thomas would be more conservative. Okay, my commentary on this article is that it is way too ambiguous. Like, you just leave off the title of, oh, he's the second most conservative. immediately that is going to be like a red flag for any liberal or leftist or whatever that might view the man. I mean, you have to like outline his actual positions and like have people develop their own opinions of the guy, like of how right leaning or left leaning he is. And yeah. What do you think, S man?
That sounds pretty accurate. I mean, like, I do think that we should probably leave off labels if they're liberal, conservative, or whatever. I also have a problem with just having it on a liberal to conservative spectrum, like having it just a straight line to liberal to conservative. I think they should kind of branch it out to like progressive and other things like that, you know?
Yeah, and the thing about the term liberal is that it's a little bit ambiguous as well. That's why I try to avoid using the word liberal. I mean, I guess I'm used to it, but Cult of Ham, even in his opinion, people like you, me, and Aspie are probably liberals to a certain extent in his eyes. I mean, he once said that in the Poor Bastards chat that I even think of some of you as liberals or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly what he said. I have to have like an interview with him on liberalism.
Okay.
But anyway, this was quite interesting. I just came across this as I was looking up for articles about Kavanaugh and his beliefs. And this is, wait, what the heck? How do I close this? Okay. Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But for some reason, San Francisco Chronicle has this big ass thing in the way right here. Anyway, Judge Kavanaugh on lying to federal agents. Now, this is quite odd here because if he really is caught lying to federal agents, I mean, it's one thing if a senator or a representative of the House was to be lying, but a judge, a possible judge nominee to be lying, that's, yeah, I say don't appoint the guy because I don't want the guy being appointed because of all people that should be the most principled when it comes to politics and not be so partisan. It should be judges. I mean, is my observation about them. And I mean, they're not supposed to even espouse political opinions. And in that same light, I would say that even lying, that takes it to a next step on what you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I looked at a case where Judge Brett Kavanaugh on the D.C. Circuit sided with a criminal defendant asserting a battered woman syndrome defense. What? Okay. Today, let's look at an opinion that aired his skepticism about an ever metastasizing, however you pronounce that, tool of federal prosecutors. 18 U.S.C.
Metastasizing.
Metastasizing. Thank you, Aspie. Being the boy genius that he is. The statute that makes it a federal crime to lie in any matter within the jurisdiction of the executive, legislative, or judicial branch of the federal government. That language has been read to include lying on federal forms or to federal employees, giving it an astonishingly broad scope. Section 1001 has become a go-to tool federal prosecutors to indict people for lying to investigators, often in politically charged cases where such process crimes are the only crime that can be charged or proven. As a veteran of the Kenneth Starr's investigative team, Judge Kavanaugh has had a lot of exposure to the usefulness and hazards of Section 1001 and similar statutes. Okay, bring me the details. Where's the beef? What exactly has he lied on? Gonna bring up the details. Marlon Moore was, this is unclear, most likely either a buyer, user, or dealer of cocaine who made the mistake of signing for a package of cocaine sent through the U.S. mail. With limited evidence, the government was unable to convict him on drug charges, resulting in 2 hung juries. Excuse me. Instead, like Al Capone going down for tax evasion, he was convicted of a federal felony for signing a phony name on a postal service delivery receipt for the box of Coke. Okay. Let's see. How does that connect to Kavanaugh, though?
Yeah.
The D.C. Circuit.
I'll be right back. You can go continue. I'll be right back.
All right. The D.C. Circuit's opinion in United States v. Moore recites that postal inspectors, by means undiscussed, flagged the box of cocaine before it was delivered and believed it was addressed to a fictitious person, Karen White. So they set up a sting to arrest whoever claimed it. Moore arrived at the address while the postal inspector was on the scene, claimed to be Karen White's boyfriend, and at her request, he signed a delivery form as Kevin Jones when he came back to retrieve the box from the house. They concluded he must have been the intended recipient and arrested him, but in the end, they could only convict him of the fake name on the receipt. See? Section 1001 makes it a crime to knowingly and willfully make any materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or representation. Makes sense. I mean, you're trying to put out an investigation to see how you should properly punish somebody, and you're just screwing over the whole process when you start forging documents and whatnot. Moore argued on appeal that his lie was not material because the postal inspector was going to arrest him for claiming the box, no matter what name he wrote down on the form. Judge Douglas Ginsburg's opinion upholding Moore's conviction conceded this, but fell back on the general rule in federal criminal cases of this type that material false statements are judged by whether they could affect the government's function or investigation, not whether they actually did. Okay, I'm still kind of wondering as to how this ties into Kavanaugh. Like, what did Kavanaugh do? Was he claiming that Moore did not lie or something? I mean, if that would be the case, and that would be a poor place of judgment, and I would not, in that case, want Kavanaugh to be appointed as SCOTUS. Or I would at least give the leftists the more of the benefit of the doubt to trash him, just by going off of this information right here. Moore's false statement was capable of affecting the Postal Service's general function of tracking packages and identifying the recipients of packages entrusted to it. Moore's use of a false name also could have impeded the ability of the Postal Service to investigate the trafficking of narcotics through the mails. Had Moore not returned, his having given a false name could have prevented the Postal Service from identifying and locating him in pursuit of its investigation.
Yeah, I just went to the part where Lapis joins, and I already saw what the fuck happened. Honestly, I'm not fucking shocked that the shit show goes down. Did she leave immediately, or did she stay for a while?
No, she stayed to the end. I mean, after we had kicked out Gemini, after Aspie had kicked out Gemini.
Fucking hell, why did he have to fucking pull that shit? Even if you didn't think Lapis was a girl, like, you don't need to fucking say it. Holy fuck. Sorry, I just had to, I was like, I just needed to see
Don't assume the gender.
Okay.
Fuck. I'm gonna have to watch that later just to see
And
that.
by the way, I was there was one line that I said during that stream. I was all like, do not be so sure. I mean, I don't think Lapis has cut it off. I mean, that was mainly supposed to be a joke, but even I, as a cis, heterosexual, Christian, conservative, white male, got uncomfortable with Gemini just pressing Lapis on this issue. Like, it was cringy as fuck.
Sounds fucking creepy.
It was just unnecessary in my eyes.
Yeah, it sounds fucking creepy from how you guys describe it, but I'm going to watch it later, and Lord knows that I'm pretty sure the accusations of transphobia against him are going to never go away, and honestly, I can't sympathize. I can't be sympathetic to him about it. But anyway.
I wouldn't go so far, but he was definitely being an ass.
Yeah, you're damn right, motherfucker. He was being an ass.
Okay. He would have to say something to like counteract what he said right there for me to actually be able to defend him from accusations of transphobia. But other than that, until then, I just say, yeah, let the wolves have at him. I mean, it doesn't mean that I personally dislike the guy. But anyway.
Yeah.
This is the same basic logic that was used in the Section 1001 and perjury cases against, among others, Bill Clinton, Scooter Libby, Martha Stewart, and Michael Flynn. It doesn't matter if you lied to somebody who already knew the truth. Okay, I haven't heard a mention about Kavanaugh ever since the first paragraph here. They're just talking about Marlon Moore in this whole time. I haven't heard Kavanaugh's name mentioned what? Okay, so if I had just continued reading on, we probably would have got to the part of where Judge Kavanaugh was tied into this whole thing. Anyway, Judge Kavanaugh concurred in the decision, but wrote his own separate opinion. He was willing to go along with the majority's broad definition of materiality, despite its air of big government creepiness, so far as it went. After all, the Postal Service, in this context, does have an interest in deterring people from using it as a drug courier service. And it's not up to judges to decide if it's good policy to use package tracking services to ensnare people who try. But he was concerned about the trap for unwary citizens created by a government that can prosecute anyone for a felony for relying on what appear to be trivial forms, and argued that the way to check this is to hold the government to a strict standard of proven criminal intent in these cases. Okay. What are you saying? Is he saying that there was no intent to forge evidence into fake documents and whatnot from Marlin Moore? I mean, I don't get it. This case highlights one of the difficult issues that can arise in prosecutions under the ever metastasizing 1001. Unlike many government forms, PS Form 3849 contained no warning that an inaccurate statement might be a crime. And it is not otherwise clear that more or most people would know that signing the wrong, would know that signing the wrong name on a postal delivery form is a crime. As many others have noted, 1001 prosecutions can pose a risk of abuse and injustice. In part, that's because 1001 applies to virtually any statement an individual makes to virtually any federal government official, even when the individual making the statement is not under oath, unlike in perjury cases, or otherwise aware that criminal punishment can result from a false statement. Okay. I'm not so sure of how that gets to the nub of the matter. Maybe I was just trapped inside the thoughts of my head instead of actually focusing on my reading. That's kind of one of the flaws with myself when it comes to reading, is that sometimes when I'm in the middle of reading something, I'll be thinking about something else in the back of my head. That'll just distract me from paying attention to what I'm reading. His solution: read the term willfully in Section 1001 to require the government to prove that the defendant not only knew the statement was false, but also that the defendant knew that making the false statement would be a crime. I mean, no shit. It's a criminal investigation. I think that a false statement would be considered a crime when it comes to something like that. I mean, when it comes to lying about, I did not cheat on your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever else, something like that, have you? I mean, I don't think that should be something considered as a crime. It's immoral, of course. But when it comes to an investigation, if you're lying to try and muddy up the waters of the investigation, that's where that it becomes not only immoral, but in my eyes, should be considered illegal as well. To be sure, ignorance of law is no defense. Is a hoary, is that how you pronounce that? H-O-A-R-Y. Hoary maxim. Hoary maxim? But it does not automatically apply to today's phalanx of federal regulatory crimes. For some regulatory offenses, particularly statutes like 1001, that prescribe only willful conduct. The Supreme Court has recognized an ignorance of law or mistake of law defense, or has required affirmative proof of the defendant's knowledge that his or her conduct was unlawful. I guess I ought to add a caveat to what I had said a little bit earlier, and that is, if you are corrected in your misinformation, if you accidentally misinform to where it comes off as a lie, and if somebody else points it out to you, well then, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the person should be taken easy on if they were to misinform with an investigation, and they just correct the record a little bit later. So anyway, the general line the Supreme Court and other courts have drawn, and which makes more sense in cases where Congress used both the words knowingly and willfully in the same statute, is to require a particularly heightened knowledge of law requirement when the statute bans something that's only bad because it's part of a government regulatory scheme, as opposed to being an ordinarily bad thing, like, say, assault. The Latin terms are malum prohibitum and malum in se. More on this body of case law here. I'm pretty sure that Aspie is still playing his game right now while he's just listening in. But S-Man, are you there? Or where are you? S-Man? I don't know. He might be busy off doing something.
Hey, I gotta go. My little nephew wants me to swim with them, so I'll on a backyard. So.
All right. You have fun with that. And looks like S-Man had left. Whatever it is that it's up with S-Man, sorry that you couldn't stay. Take a sip of my coffee here. And now I'm all alone. Hold on a second. Maybe S-Man messaged me something on Twitter. I don't know. Checking my phone here. Doesn't look like... Yeah, no, he did not message me anything, so... Oh no, okay, S-Man, you're back.
Sorry, I accidentally closed out of this tab as I was watching a bit further in the stream, and honestly, I would have kicked that motherfucker from the stream within badgering on about that question. That's fucking dumb. Sorry, just
he was coming off as kind of like keeper cast in a way. I mean, his tone of voice and everything just came off. Just reminded me too much of Topher, and it rather disgusted and disturbed me, to be quite honest. Because, I mean, you know how detailed in my Jocelyn video that I detailed of how I find Topher's voice to be utterly nauseating in his personality.
Yeah, like, and the poor bastards chat, because I just told them about the stream just to get their take on it, and everyone's, like, lighting up the fucking... chat, not this stream chat, but the poor bastards chat is being lit up about it, and I can't blame them.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat right now. There's nothing happening. So if it was blowing up, I would definitely know.
Yeah.
Like here, let me show you how I got it set up here for a second.
Okay.
The way that I have it set up, I'm like I have like one tab over the other tab. Like, see, there's there's a stream that I'm browsing to keep a look at the chat, and then I have Google Hangouts so I can actually control what's going on.
Didn't you have a second monitor?
This is my second monitor right here, and then my first monitor is where that I am having the news articles pulled up.
Oh, okay. All right, I forgot you. I was like, I thought he had a second monitor, but okay, yeah. But you know, like, I just hope that whoever Trump chooses is like kind of has like either the same principles or kind of does the same type of thing Anthony Kennedy did. I can't really say I have a bad word to say about Justice Kennedy.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm so far getting is that Judge Kavanaugh doesn't seem to be. I mean, I'm not so approving of it, but it might be something that would put you in his good graces and Kavanaugh's good graces, is that he doesn't seem to be outright against Roe v. Wade. But I have like I have an article pulled up about that. If this article would get its act together, maybe if I refresh it, this thing will just...
You're gonna have to either... I think
there we go.
Okay.
But anyway, as I was saying, my commentary on this article so far is that I do not see anything coming from Judge Kavanaugh saying that he outright lied. I mean, in my observation of reading this anyways.
Yeah. I'm just going to tell this joke very quickly, and, you know, it's kind of interesting. Justice Kennedy is the very first Kennedy to actually survive to retirement. Right. But yeah. I ripped it from Ranting Monkey, but yeah. Okay, so it's a position on Roe v. Wade might make me be a little more approving, but I'd like to see other positions from him before I would exactly, because if Senator S-Man was to vote on this shit, I probably would just kind of
Just because of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade is your staple subject. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, that's my staple subject, and you know how I stand.
Yeah.
Judge Kavanaugh admitted that the D.C. Circuit had not read Section 1001 to impose any such requirement when it upheld the indictment of Clinton fundraiser Haria J, however you pronounce that, HSIA, in 1999. And that the issue of whether to reconsider that prior decision wasn't before the court anyway, because Moore had not raised the issue. But he required that but he argued, not required, but he argued that intervening decisions made it time to revisit the issue to prevent further abuses of Section 1001. The Supreme Court's precedents arguably required district courts in 1001 cases to give a willfulness instruction that requires proof that the defendant knew his conduct was a crime. To be sure, in many false statements cases, the government will be able to easily prove that the defendant knew his conduct was unlawful. But in some cases, it will not be able to do so. And those, of course, are precisely the cases where it would seem inappropriate and contrary to 1001 statutory text to impose criminal punishment. Okay. One second. I'm going to take a look at the title again. Judge Kavanaugh on lying. Okay, no. It's given his opinion on the practice of lying to federal agents. This is not outright saying that Judge Kavanaugh himself lied to federal agents. So my mistake. I misread the title of this article. So I was expecting somebody to accuse Judge Kavanaugh of lying, but that was my mistake, everybody. So my bad. No, he's just commenting on this Marlon Moore case when it comes to lying to judges or lawyers, federal agents, not lawyers, when it comes to lying to federal agents in investigation. Was Judge Kavanaugh right? It's not hard to see why he was concerned that Section 1001 prosecutions could lend themselves to serious overreach, especially in politically charged cases like those of Libby, Flynn, and Jay. And there is a serious argument that he is right about the language of the statute. That argument is sufficiently serious, in fact, that 4 years after his 2010 opinion in Moore, Judge Kavanaugh was vindicated when the Justice Department reversed course and conceded in briefs to the Supreme Court that Section 1001 and a related statute require proof that the defendant knew his conduct was unlawful. In one of those cases, United States versus Ajoku, the Supreme Court, without writing an opinion, vacated the defendant's conviction in light of the confession of error by the Solicitor General in his brief for the United States filed on March 10, 2014. The question of which federal crimes require this stringent standard of proof will probably come before the Supreme Court again, and it might even come up again in the Section 1001 context. Despite Ajoku, the section of the Justice Department U.S. Attorney's Manual dealing with Section 1001 still doesn't appear to instruct prosecutors to apply the acted with knowledge that his conduct was unlawful standard. But one way or another, Judge Kavanaugh's experience in the beltways, I think it meant to spell beltways, but it got the L and T backwards. So, whoops, big typo right there. Beltway's investigative wars has taught him to be particularly careful about ensuring that federal prosecutors aren't throwing the book at people who didn't mean to break the law.
Yeah. One thing though, a Joku, it sounds like I don't know, it just reminds me of Goku for some stupid reason, even though I don't like that I don't like Goku. It's kind of imagine if they misspelled it and it was like United States versus Goku.
Oh,
that would be fucking funny.
I'm sorry, you don't have enough tanks in the Army and Marines to take down Goku, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So anyway, Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh could deal death blow to Obamacare. So I have like at least three articles that are analyzing the opinions of Brett Kavanaugh and his takes on at least three issues. Like, we have healthcare, gun rights, and abortion. So
okay, honestly, with Yeah, honestly, on Obamacare, I don't get why they can't just let it expire. It's going to expire in 2020. I don't see the problem with just letting it die on its own.
I don't know. Maybe that's their fallback plan, but they're thinking if we can get it done sooner, then that would be cool too. Or I don't know.
Yeah.
If they can get it repealed sooner, that would be cool too. I did not know that there was an expiration to the ACA.
Really, you didn't? Because when I googled it, I'm gonna Google it again. Let's see if I can form it.
I never heard of it, honestly.
Really, because I think it said its start date was March 23rd, 2010, and from at least something I found, it said it has an expiration date. Let's see.
Okay. That would be for the context of reading this article. What's it say?
Okay, so I found it says effective March 23rd, 2010. Individual mandate repealed starting 2019. Remaining provisions are phased in by 2020. All right. Okay, so I think it's individual mandate repeal is starting 2019. So okay, I retract that. It was just they're talking about the individual mandate, and I'm not a big fan of the individual mandate, to be honest.
Okay, so apparently a repeal has come through Congress, but apparently it doesn't actually, the repeal of it doesn't actually take effect until 2019 is what I'm getting from what you're reading, at least.
Yeah. Okay,
and,
so I retract
the full effect of the ACA is supposed to come in at 2020. I don't know.
I don't know. It just says individual mandate. I thought I read somewhere else that it said 2020. So I retract that. I'll just put individual mandate. The repeal is starting in 2019. And I guess the reason why, let's say it was to end in 2020, I think the reason they would want to end it sooner is so in case a new president is elected in 2020, the repeal has already taken place.
Right. The Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh could deal death blow to Obamacare. This from USA Today. And from my observation, I find USA Today and US News to be fairly objective when it comes to the news. I recall reading an article talking about the airstrike on Syria. You talk, the Shayrat airfield. And it was critical of Trump in that area, whilst also being critical to Putin, and it was critical to all sides, it seemed. With his new Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, Donald Trump is now using all three branches of government to try to kill the Affordable Care Act. With the nomination of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, President Donald Trump has now engaged all three branches of government in his fight to get rid of the ACA and protections for people with pre-existing health conditions. Kavanaugh made clear last year in a speech at the Heritage Foundation that he thinks the court was wrong to uphold the ACA's insurance mandate as constitutional. Yeah, I mean, you're taking away people's right of association, as S-Man would put it.
Yeah.
As my good friend S-Man here would put it. I mean, you're forcing people to associate with the health insurance plan when they don't really want to.
Yeah, even Democrats. I've met plenty of Democrats who hated the mandate. They said that they didn't like it. I just thought it was fucking stupid.
And maybe technically a person could argue that it's constitutional, but even if it was, I still think that it is unprincipled. I mean, looking outside of the Constitution, at least.
Yeah.
He has also said a president should be allowed to not enforce components of a law if he personally deems it unconstitutional. Encouragement, and this president doesn't need. In a way, that's true with all of his executive orders and whatnot. There couldn't be a more in-your-face threat to the ACA than from a Justice Kavanaugh. Okay, so I think this article writer is like leaning towards keeping the ACA, it seems like. And it's just talking about, oh, the ACA is getting repealed. Oh, the ACA is getting repealed. That's kind of subjective, that statement is, because a person can either view the ACA positively and think, oh, this is a bad thing, or they can view the ACA negatively and think that this is a good thing. Kavanaugh being a death blow to Obamacare.
Yeah.
In pursuit of his goal to kill the ACA, Trump first tried Congress, making repeal making repeal the principal thrust of his first year in office. But legislators pay attention to popular opinion, and provisions that guarantee coverage for people with medical conditions and offer Medicaid to millions of lower-income Americans turned out to be immensely important to the public. At least for this Congress, the legislative route to repealing the ACA failed. Yeah. Oh, God. Screw it. I'm going to show it. Brandon in the chat saying, I don't like rape, except video game rape, except for, oh, God.
Jesus fucking Christ, Brandon, dude. Oh, Lord.
He's all like, they're just simulated people. They're not real people. I can rape them all I want and go ahead and jack off to them pixels.
Well, honestly, if Barbara Bush was a video game, Jocelyn would be all over that shit.
Oh,
but yeah.
Fuck.
Okay, now that I've scarred DarkCon for life, and Brandon's already scarred DarkCon for life. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I would eat Blair's ass out till she shits on me, as Brandon said. Calm down, S-Man. Oh crap. Okay, this is right
Lord.
now right now. This episode of Strike Force has just gotten lightened up.
It got really fucking kinky too.
Oh shit. I am the kinky conservative after all.
The dark kinky conservatarian.
Yeah. So Trump's best hope for ACA repeal. Sorry, I need to get the grin off of my face before I read anymore. All right. So next, Trump turned to administrative solutions, or as he calls it, gutting the ACA. Here, the list of his sabotage efforts is long. Yeah, sabotage. That's what some of us want. Trump has already cut funds to communicate with the public by 90%. Wait, what?
Funds to communicate with the public? Like, what do you mean? Like public broadcasting? I honestly am fine with getting rid of public broadcasting.
What the fuck? Does that have anything to do with healthcare? Is what I wonder.
Yeah.
I mean, if they are talking about public broadcasting, well then, yeah, we're against business subsidies, for crying out loud. So we're approving of that, you dingus. Introduced junk plans, which can exclude coverage for pre-existing conditions and make ACA policies more expensive. Cut off cost-sharing reduction plans. Okay, cost-sharing reduction plans. The thing is, a person is not responsible for another person's medical bills, so screw that. To help low-income people pay for coverage. And just last week, without warning or good reason, stopped billions in risk adjustment payments that help insurers pay for covering sicker people. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Read further in the chat. Dark kink servitarian.
Everyone, go to Twitter and tweet hashtag the dark kink conservatarian.
No. Hey, look at the chat. He says, oh, 1 second. Look at there. Dark kink servitarian.
Yes, dark kink servitarian. Yes.
Well, what am I doing to myself? Okay, so stop that screen sharing. Get back to screen one, and
I think DarkCon is like I just get this impression you're like a masochist along with JJ when he reads shit verbatim, and then I get to make that video.
Mm-hmm. I guess to a certain extent, I am a masochist. I mean, I don't hardly block anyone on Twitter. I did not take down and I still haven't taken down the Bearing video, the ratings, nor the comments. I just let it all flow because I love the pain that Bearing fans introduce upon me.
when they whip DarkCon.
Don't you mean DarkyCon?
Yes.
As said by Ham. Wait, that's racist.
I still laughed when you put yeah and then the points up.
Okay, it took a little while for it to click on me, but Ham is calling me Darky Khan as in a kind of a mild slur to black people, as Darky is. Oh,
fuck.
Ham being the edgelord he is, of course.
Yeah.
Except the problem is that I'm not black. It's more like Pasty Con. Red Feather says, "Hey, I like bearing." No. I'm just saying, Feather. I mean, there's like a bit of a long there's a bit of, well, not a very long drama, but there was a bit of a drama that I was involved in between Loudmouth Reviews and Bearing. I have a video that goes talking about that. You can find that in the section of my channel page. It says The Dark Conservatarian, and if you go back enough, the very first video in that playlist will be the parentheses piece parentheses the Bearing versus Loudmouth drama review. Operation Get Behind the Dark Econ, says Red Feather. Brandon says, I remember when I accidentally sold my 4-year-old cousin for marijuana. What the fuck? Oh, God. Worth it. He says, worth it. Oh, jeez. Red Feather says, oh, okay, I'm always behind on drama. Okay, well, yeah, get once that video. I mean, it's kind of an in detailed review of that drama, or at least what all that I could find out about it from people talking about it with me and clips that I could find and so on and so forth. But anyway, back to off of YouTube drama and onto U.S. healthcare. All right. While we are likely not done with the sabotage, the effect of these administrative solutions so far seems to be increasing premiums for millions of Americans, while leaving the ACA strong enough to still cover millions and millions. So the judicial branch is Trump's best hope to finally repeal the ACA and pre-existing condition protections. Okay, so that's the main thing that it is going off of to try and, I guess, pull at people's heartstrings, is that this is like, what, the third, fourth, fifth time that it's mentioned pre-existing pre-existing conditions being protected under the ACA. I mean, what's your thought on the pre-existing protections, Just Man?
I have a bit of a quandary. Part of me, I can see the argument for, but I can also see the argument against, like where you force them to cover pre-existing conditions in terms of, you could probably find people, like companies that are like, yeah, we don't give a shit if you got pre-existing conditions, come here. And then they're gonna be like, some are gonna be like, oh hell no, nigga, you're gonna have to go somewhere else for it. It's like,
bitch, you're too white to say the word nigga.
Nigga, you're whiter than me.
Oh jeez, that was so staticky. That was loud.
Good.
Oh god. Brandon says Blair White used a red feather to tickle Zach's balls. Okay, I'm muting you because your laugh is obnoxious. Getting back, Brandon says his basketballs in his garage. Well, fuck you, Brandon. I have a scrotum. Okay, and the timing couldn't be better for the Trump administration. It has just decided not to defend a case brought by Republican states that would dismantle the law and coverage requirements for people with pre-existing conditions, increasing the likelihood that it ends up at the Supreme Court, no matter that the case is widely considered to be frivolous. This is what the spoils of Supreme Court appointments are for. Okay, I say that if there are to be like pre-existing condition protections, that it needs to be dealt with on a state-by-state basis. Oh god, the chat is more active than it has been in a long while, and I'm having to play catch-up here. Red Feather says, but what if the pre-existing condition was caused by the medical industry? Brandon says that he'll stop. No. Don't stop on my account, Brandon. I mean, go ahead. Talk all the shit you want. Nestman says Dark Con wants to bite the pillow while Blair goes in dry. Thanks, S. Damn it.
You're welcome.
But what if the pre-existing condition was caused by the medical industry? Okay, what are you talking about? Are you talking about if, like, As somebody goes to a hospital and they get sick or get an infection or something goes wrong with an operation, and then they have to go to a different insurer to get a different healthcare plan. And then they're all like, we're not going to pay for your protection in that area because it's pre-existing, because it happened before we started covering you. Whatever. I don't know. You know what? I've been noticing that your laugh has been getting higher and higher pitch, man. Are your balls retracting into your pelvis or something?
No, it's just the shit I find hilarious. Also, I can have a lower pitched laugh, my dude. The reason I laughed so hard yesterday's stream was the fact that it was fucking fucking that black-faced person.
Red Feather says birth defects caused by hospitals or medication. I see what you're meaning. But I don't know. I mean, you're going to make like one healthcare provider responsible for another healthcare provider. I mean, it depends on the circumstance. I mean, if you get a medication by a healthcare provider, but then you go applying for coverage by a health insurer that is owned by the same company, well then I guess you would have a bit of a point. I mean, I'll just give the benefit of the doubt. I mean, healthcare is a bit of a complicated issue for me, but I am a free marketeer libertarian, generally speaking. But yeah, healthcare is just a hard issue for me to nail down. And about the term of single payer, it's so ambiguous. Like, I do not know if you ever saw like the end of one of my Bearing live stream, S-Man, but me and Cult of Ham were talking at the end of that stream about healthcare, and I told him that it seems that the term single payer is so ambiguous because me and him lined up, and he wasn't arguing with the definitions that we were providing here, but we lined up 3 different definitions for single payer. One is it's all controlled by the government. The other is that your medical bills are just paid for by the government, but you can still go to private healthcare providers like hospitals and emergency rooms and so on and so forth. Or C, the other kind of single payer system is you can go to a private health insurer, but there's also a public option. I'm thinking to myself, wait, what? Isn't that basically kind of what we have here in the United States? I mean, we have ourselves a private option like Blue Cross and Blue Shield and Aetna and whatnot. But we also have a public option, that being Medicare and Medicaid. So it just seems odd to me.
Yeah.
Plus, there's Switzerland, which isn't entirely all publicized. The healthcare industry is. It's still privately owned for the most part. Okay. Dark Khan gets pegged by Blair while Brandon watched from the closet, and JJ got hot from it. S-Man says. Red Feather says, and S-Man filmed it. Brandon says.
Oh, shit.
I'm in the closet recording so I can upload it to Pornhub. He meant to say hub, but he said hum. A quick cash grab. Well, congratulations, Brandon. You being the edgelord you are, trying to profitize off of anything edgy or anything at all, even if
He's
it's
a
the edgiest
capitalist.
edgy shit.
Red Feather was getting off to watching Dark Khan and Blair get it on. Get wrecked, Red Feather. You're streaming with Owen tonight, really?
Brandon says, okay.
All right, I'll have to check that out later.
Well, have fun as much as you can anyways, Brandon. But anyway, so on top of the docket of cases he is likely to face on limiting access to birth control or reproductive rights, okay, that I know is a far more subjective facet of healthcare when it comes to birth control. And you go talking about reproductive rights, I don't know. That seems to be like a bit of a false labeling. Like, it's not because people are all like, we hate reproductive rights, so we're against abortion. It's because we hate abortion while we're against abortion. I mean, for the record here, S-Man here is a self-acclaimed pro-choicer. I mean, we have to still have that stream at some point. Sorry, S-Man, it probably won't happen for a few weeks now. I'll explain it to you at a later point of why that stream won't happen. But,
yeah, that's fine. You wanted to include other topics as well in that discussion, debate, whatever you call it. But yeah, no, don't worry. Like that's understandable. Like,
but Anyway, when it comes to the issue of birth control and reproductive rights and within healthcare, that's a little bit more subjective. Pre-existing conditions, more people can get behind that, protections for pre-existing conditions. But when it comes to birth control, there are still a lot of people who are all like, why force people to pay for those, like, privately owned business and so on and so forth? Like you have the case with Hobby Lobby not wanting to pay for certain birth controls for women. Well, there were other forms of birth control that they were willing to pay, just they weren't willing to pay for all types. And there's a whole court case brought up over that.
I personally think that that if they don't want to cover birth control, period, I think that's their choice.
Right. I mean, that guy T has that same stance as well. I loved his video response to Jacqueline Glenn on that issue.
I'm going to see that.
Yeah, it was odd. There's this one line that he says in there where he's all like, voting will solve this more than praying? Yeah, right. And I'm an atheist or something like that. He was like, I guess it's more from a pessimistic on government functions position why he says that voting is more vain. It's more in vain than praying. Like, that's how doubtful he is of the governmental system, to the point that even he as an atheist thinks that praying is less in vain than voting. Damn. Red Feathers says capitalism is different than the free market, though. We here in the U.S. got screwed by the Federal Reserve and the banks and corporations being able to technically be individuals. Okay, the thing is, I disagree with that philosophy. Corporations are not individuals, they are collectives, so therefore they do not have the same rights as individuals. And for people to say that corporations are people, like, even on a legal stance, like, I don't approve of that terminology and whatnot, because it just opens up another whole can of worms when it comes to the debate of rights. Justice Kavanaugh, we got to speed through this. I mean, it's already 2:40 right now. I'm getting distracted with shit talking and whatnot.
Yeah.
Justice Kavanaugh could deal a death blow to pre-existing condition protections, a single unelected arbiter of what Congress and the president could not do. And the cases will come. While Barack Obama was president and nothing attacking healthcare rights could get past his desk, the courts were the principal means of trying to overturn the ACA. Yet even a right-leaning court led by Chief Justice John Roberts found these attempts to exploit drafting errors and reinterpret meanings were not convincing. But that was a different court. As a prominent judge, Kavanaugh took the unusual step of publicly airing in his heritage speech his view of how the court should have ruled on the ACA. It was easy to read as a job interview on a matter of importance to the president. Open invitation to challenge health law. New challenges to the health law have a good chance of ending up in front of the court in one of the next two terms. Kavanaugh's appointment would be an open invitation to hear such cases. An invitation Senator Orrin Hatch, Republican in Utah, appeared to make when he said this week after a meeting with Kavanaugh that the ACA is going to be litigated. Okay, I'm going to get back to the chat after I finish this article because I've been holding off for too long. Attacking the ACA may be a partisan Republican idea, but it isn't a conservative one. What?
I mean, didn't Obamacare kind of originate from Republicans? Like it did have some Republican origins.
Yeah. I mean, there was Mitt Romney. Plus, the individual mandate was something that was brought up by Newt Gingrich and his Congress in the early '90s of Bill Clinton's term and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, anyway, but I don't get that line. But it isn't a conservative one. By definition, if you are a conservative, that means that you kind of want to preserve the status quo of your country. And considering what the fuck is that? Oh, God. Just ignore the ad. Anyway, and for in this case, you want to preserve the status quo when it comes to healthcare, like keep it free market and less regulated and so on and so forth. That would end you up wanting to be anti-ACA. So I don't get why it says it isn't a conservative one. The ACA is established law, and insurance is established law. What is that? Is that supposed to be a statement that it's not going nowhere? Like, screw you. I mean, that's not going to stop us from trying still, bitch. And insurance exchanges and consumer protections are enshrined in statute and regulated by states. Okay, that's fine. I mean, let the states resolve on a state-by-state basis how they want to handle healthcare. Conservative jurists like Chief Justice John Roberts or retiring Justice Anthony Kennedy, regardless of how they may feel about the ACA politically, recognized that and prevented the courts from overstepping their bounds. Kavanaugh cannot be counted on to do the same. I don't know. You haven't really provided any evidence as to how Kavanaugh would invade state rights. Like, citation needed.
Yeah.
Their impersonation. What were you saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the whole states' rights thing. I mean, I'm kind of moderate with that whole issue of states' rights, but yeah, I would like to see like some evidence of what this person's saying in this article. To be honest, like I like the articles when they link to death everything, so they don't take anything out of context.
All right. Rarely has a Supreme Court nominee been so closely associated with a past and likely future ruling that affects so many. Any senator, Democrat or Republican, who is concerned about the court becoming a political vehicle for changing health policy, ought to be deeply troubled by Kavanaugh's nomination. What do you mean changing health policy? Like, in which way should they be concerned? Like, changing health policy to the left or to the right? Because that's another thing that is also subjective. The constituents, the public at large, should be clear-eyed about the stakes. A vote to confirm Kavanaugh could be the final straw, the one that ends their access to affordable health care. Okay, yeah, that end of article. So, yeah. So far, I'm not looking at Kavanaugh as super disapproving. I mean, when it comes to this, I thought this was going to be like one of the breaking points for me. I was thinking to myself, oh, Judge Kavanaugh a liar, better not appoint him then. But anyway, and as far as ACA ruling, I have been against Obamacare for the longest time, so nothing super negative for me anyways about this. I got a question, Estimate. How is it that I make you a moderator?
For the stream, click on my. There's 3 dots next to someone's name. If you scroll to the right,
there's the shield with the plus sign at the bottom that says "Add Moderator."
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I made you a moderator.
Oh, cool.
Show Brandon. Show Worm Dick.
It's showing the chat for me. Let me go to all live chat, so it shows all messages. Okay. All right. I'm seeing messages awaiting approval. Okay, only one from Brandon. So, in the chat,
Are any of you going to do a stream about the Strzok hearing? No, I don't really think so, Red Feather, because yes, on a personal moral issue, adultery is wrong. I would say. I mean, this is what I'm hearing that the main thing with Strzok is. I mean, on a personal moral issue, yeah, adultery is wrong. But I don't know if that should really be the make or break. I don't know. I mean, considering the guy's a prosecutor, he's more of a prosecutor than an actual politician like a legislator or a president or a governor or whatnot. If he was like one of those types of politicians and not an investigator, it'd be a little bit of a different issue, I would say. But the guy is a prosecutor, so maybe perhaps his word isn't so trustworthy when it comes to the corruption surrounding his adulterous affairs and whatnot. But I actually watched a Hard Bastard stream, and funny how the guy is not keeping up his streams at all, but I think it was like last night or night before or something like that. He was watching a video about the Strzok hearings, and it was quite heated. I mean, it was quite entertaining, but I could not quite wrap my head around the information, the bits of information, whatnot. All that I could gather from that is that it has something to do with Strzok having adulterous affairs. And he's like one of the prosecutors or one of the investigators for this whole the supposed Trump-Russia collusion stuff.
Yeah, honestly, I just can't really give a shit about this whole thing when it comes to adultery. Like, it's wrong, yes, but honestly, like, does it make you a bad person? I'd say yes, but I don't think it can affect your political judgment. Like, Bill Clinton was a douchebag when he was governor of Arkansas and then president of the United States when he was cheating on Hillary Clinton, but I can't really blame him, to be honest. But I digress. It's like you can be a good politician or a good leader even if you can't keep your dick in your pants.
Okay, I have to also address what Red Feather said. What Red Feather said in the chat here. Adultery? I don't care if he fucked around on his wife. He had an active role in the impeach Trump BS while completely ignoring the DNC scandal.
Yeah, the 2016 election was a pretty corrupt one.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, was the guy a prosecutor during the 2016 election? Like, I don't know. I mean, Strzok, I don't know many names and how long they have been in politics and so on and so forth. So I would not know how much he was in the FBI, how much power he had in the FBI during the 2016 election. I mean, if he did have a lot of investigative powers and whatnot during 2016, well, then I would say that, yes, that would be a case of abject hypocrisy. But like I said, I don't know of how much power he had. That's not, Red Feather says also, that's not at all what the hearing was about. It was merely mentioned in reference to Strzok lying. Okay, so it was a thing that was dealt with in the hearing, but it's a very, very small thing. But that's literally all that I heard. I mean, I did not read or glance over anything about Strzok's investigation or ignoring of the DNC scandal and so on and so forth. Strzok was a lead investigator in the FBI. Says Red Feather in the chat. Strzok was a lead investigator during 2016. Red Feather. I mean, answer me that question, please. So anyway, getting on to the main subject at hand, though, about Kavanaugh being a possible judge and analyzing his positions on certain issues. A Kavanaugh Supreme Court may expand gun rights, senators say. Okay, and how long is this article? I just gotta say. It is a little bit of a lengthy one, so I do not know how long I'll go on, and it is kind of getting late in the day. When I have to like be going soon. Red Feather says yes under Comey. Okay, well then that settles it. Yeah, Strzok is a hypocrite. He is a liar, and he should not be trusted in the whole impeach Trump and Trump Russia investigation bullcrap. That's what I have to say. I mean, sorry, not much to stream about that. I mean, I'd leave that stuff to Hard Bastard, because Hard Bastard, he can really nail government corruption a whole lot better than I can and comprehend it too. But it's just a shame that the guy is being hammered so much by YouTube and the whole thing with the Atlantic and whatnot, that he goes to taking down his videos so much, his own videos. He had involvement in the fake dossier as well, said Red Feather. Okay, the fake dossier, that I think I know for certain was dealt with the Trump-Russia investigation. So yeah, Strzok, not a person to be trusted. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh's views on gun rights may push the court to expand Second Amendment protections, say senators and activists on both sides of the debate. Okay, so it's a kind of objective when it comes to Kavanaugh and expanding gun rights, which that's another plus that I would have to put Brett Kavanaugh for. A 2011 Kavanaugh opinion arguing for striking down the District of Columbia's assault weapons ban suggests that he would be a stronger gun rights advocate than the Justice President Donald Trump has chosen him to replace, Anthony Kennedy. Oh, really? And I thought you said that the guy was a libertarianist, man.
Kennedy?
I mean,
some of his, I think it's, well, going off the article, they said some of his positions may have made him, appear like as close to libertarian justice as you could get.
For all we know, he's probably as much of a libertarian as, say, Gary Johnson was, which we all know that Gary Johnson was a pseudo-libertarian.
So Kennedy voted against striking down DC versus Keller.
I don't know. That's not what the paragraph said right there. It just was reflecting on Kavanaugh's opinion regarding striking down the DC's assault weapons ban. And was just using that as a way to compare him to Anthony Kennedy. It doesn't mention Anthony Kennedy's positions necessarily. It just says that Kavanaugh would be stronger than even Anthony Kennedy when it comes to gun rights. Judge Kavanaugh is the worst nightmare for any advocate of common sense gun violence prevention. Yeah, common sense, quote unquote, said Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Any measure preventing gun violence is at risk if it's Justice Kavanaugh. What do you mean by measure preventing gun violence? You talking about something like a full-on confiscation? I mean, I'm not trying to say that the guy is actually for that, but I mean, if that would be something that somebody at least would consider a prevention of gun violence, is a full-on gun confiscation, but at the same time, it would be violent, have a violent revolt and whatnot.
Yeah, I think there are rebel groups in this country called the Three Percenters, who are armed to the teeth, ready for that type of shit to happen.
Mm-hmm. Where Democrats are fearful, pro-gun conservatives are optimistic that a Supreme Court with Kavanaugh in place of Kennedy would expand gun rights. The court hasn't taken up a gun rights case since 2010, and it has bypassed numerous chances. To do so, despite calls from some conservative justices. Yeah, it hasn't had to bring up a case regarding gun rights ever since 2010 because there was a 2013 attempt by Obama and the Democrats to try and revive the assault weapons ban. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
The one that was instituted by Bill Clinton and Feinstein back in 1993, then was set to expire in 2013. But the thing is, it was struck down. Or no. It was sorry, my bad. It was expired in 2003. They tried to renew it in 2013. But the reason why the courts did not have to deal with that piece of legislation is that it did not even have to make it past Congress.
Yeah. Because when you were saying 2013, I'm like, no, I think it expired in either 2003 or 2004.
That was my bad. Yeah, I mean that's one of the positives that I can probably put to Bush Jr. is the striking down of that ban.
Yeah.
So anyway, if some state has banned semi-automatic weapons, they could rule that the Second Amendment trumps that state law, said Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. That's kind of an odd thing. I mean, aren't guns like aren't they like super hard to get, if not outright banned in Chicago and whatnot?
Yeah, it's extremely difficult in some northeastern states. You might as well just get like fucking a tooth ripped out. That's easier to deal with than trying to get a gun. And in New York City, you pretty much it's like an anti-gun liberal's like wet dream.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me kind of odd because I remember the 10th Amendment specifically saying, I mean, it applies more to states than it does to actual cities, but it says that states have the right to legislate upon anything that is not mentioned in the Constitution. But the thing is, gun rights, that's mentioned in the Second Amendment of the Constitution. But yet we have all these states that are bringing about gun legislation that potentially comes in conflict with the Second Amendment, but there are no federal Supreme Court justices that are ruling on those pieces of legislation. Instead, they're just letting them legislate subjectively however they want. I mean, it strikes me kind of odd. I mean, I say personally that states should be allowed to legislate on guns based on however that they want, despite what the Second Amendment says, but it still kind of strikes me as odd. Where the worst gun violence in the country is, see the gun ban laws, says Red further in the chat. All right. Said Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Once the case gets there, I hope he'll listen to both sides of the story. Is he more conservative than Justice Kennedy on some issues? I think so. This was all part of an election. President Trump said he would put constitutional conservative judges who would protect the Second Amendment. That's what he's doing, Graham said, and I say good on Trump. Praise from NRA. Of course, praise from the NRA. The National Rifle Association's top lobbyist, Chris Cox, praised Kavanaugh as an outstanding choice with an impressive record that demonstrates his strong support for the Second Amendment. The NRA has argued that bans on semi-automatic rifles, along with minimum age requirements and waiting periods for firearm sales, are unconstitutional. I don't know. Minimum age requirements. I guess a person could argue that it is unconstitutional, but the thing is, by principle, I can understand somebody want to raise the age limitation to 21, say, to get any gun.
Well, that's it. I mean, I'll have to recheck this, but I think it's 21. Like, I think you can be 18 or something and get a shotgun, but you have to be 21 to get a handgun. I'd have to check that again, but yeah. I mean, I'd say 18 is fine enough in my opinion, but I think you should be like licensed and trained.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that 18 is applied for hunting rifles as well.
I think so.
I think even Ben Shapiro said that he can understand a person wanting to raise the age limitation to 21 when it comes to some certain guns. I wouldn't remember which episode of his show that would be, but it just shows of how rather nonpartisan it is to raise the age limitation on guns. I mean, even if you even have Ben Shapiro stating, it's understandable. At the center of the conversation is Kavanaugh's 2011 dissenting opinion that said he would strike down the District of Columbia ban on some assault weapons and a requirement that all firearms be registered. A 2-to-1 majority upheld the assault rifle ban and some of the registration rules. Kavanaugh said he sympathized with the intent of the measures, but said that the Supreme Court has long made clear that the Constitution disables the government from employing certain means to prevent, deter, or detect violent crime. Yeah, I mean that should be more on a local basis on how you handle crime and whatnot. You cannot just blanketly and objectively legislate a one-size-fits-all piece of legislation for everywhere in the country.
Yeah.
A ban on a class of arms is not an incidental regulation. It is equivalent to a ban on a category of speech. Kavanaugh wrote, as I read the relevant Supreme Court precedents, the D.C. ban on semi-automatic rifles and the D.C. gun registration requirement are unconstitutional and may not be enforced. His opinion raised alarms among gun control advocates, including former U.S. Representative Gabrielle Giffords, a Democrat who in 2011 was shot in the head at point-blank range during a constituent meeting in her hometown of Tucson, Arizona. She warned that Kavanaugh has expressed a dangerous hostility toward reasonable gun regulations.
The only gun regulations I can back are...
Is she still alive, Gabrielle Giffords?
Yeah, I believe she is, although...
She must have been shot with a .22 or something, because I know that they have they shoot off some very weak rounds.
Yeah, I mean,
if she survived a shot to the head in particular. Sorry, go on.
No worries. I think either that or she was like extremely lucky. She survived by the skin of her teeth. I'm pretty sure most people wouldn't have survived by getting shot point blank range in the head. But I will say that the only gun regulations I think are really sensible is just criminal and mental health background checks. I don't necessarily have an issue with raising the minimum age for a gun. Obviously, no guns for felons and rapists. That I'm fine with. According to Lapis, which I'm going to have to really research this, apparently sex criminals somehow could get guns in Florida or something along those lines. So I'll have to look into that, of course, to see if that's true or not. But nonetheless, it's like those are really the only sensible gun regulations I think exist.
Red Feather in the chat says, yet they want to lower the voting age.
Gun violence is inevitable. Like, unless you're like secular.
S-Man? Unless you're like secular, what was he saying? Secular Hawk?
Huh? Oh, yeah. I was like, unless you're like, fucking secular Hawk, who wants to ban guns and jail those who refuse to turn over their guns to the authorities, people are going to acknowledge, yes, gun violence is inevitable. Of course, fundamentally, it'd be nice if there was no gun violence, but it's going to happen, and these gun control people don't understand that.
And I'm certainly not for banning semi-automatic rifles. And I would say to a certain extent that we should like deregulate full auto rifles like they have been heavily regulated in 1986. Red Feather says in the chat, and I have to address this chat comment, yet they want to lower the voting age to 16. If you can join the military at 18, then why raise the age for the general public? Either raise all or none. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I can definitely understand somebody want to like raise the voting age up to 25 even.
Okay, I'm gonna have to disagree with that actually, but go on.
Because you know of how we talk about of the reason why there is an age limit when it comes to sex is because brain development, because they don't have enough brain development the kids do to be able to consent. That's the main reason of it. That's the main staple of, I know, of your arguments, Desmond. I mean, by that logic as well, we could also raise the voting age. I mean, it's because they cannot consent why we do not let them have sex,
use drugs,
use guns, use drugs, yeah, and drink alcohol and whatnot. So by that same logic, it could, somebody could make the argument of raising the voting age as well, is my case. I'm not saying yes, definitely raise the voting age, but that's the way that I see that.
Well, I mean, I can see, like, obviously with sex, they can't consent, but I don't see where someone's being taken advantage of by just voting or using a gun. Like, I first shot a gun when I was 11 years old, and, you know, I wasn't taken advantage of. I knew that, you know, if I'm not careful, I could die, and I knew the ramifications behind that. I understood the situation and that I had to be careful if I'm going to use a gun. Same with, like, I'm fine with keeping the voting age at 18. I would fight any attempts to lower it to 16. I'm fine with if, you know, like, I think I wouldn't necessarily raise the minimum age for a gun. Like, I think that getting it at 18 is fine. Like, if you can die in a war at 18, if you can, you know, have all these things that, like, minimum age is 18, I say other things should be lowered to 18.
All right.
You know.
He also, Red Feather also says in the chat, the authorities with guns knew about Nicholas Cruz and did nothing. Why would we want them to be the only ones with guns? Yeah, and I sympathize with that, Red Feather. Fuck Scott Israel and his passive nature towards Nicholas Cruz, letting that shooting go on.
Yeah.
I mean, he pulled a Hillary Clinton on that one, the same way that Hillary Clinton pulled Benghazi. You know. Extreme views. Senator Dianne Feinstein of California, the top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, labeled Kavanaugh's views on gun rights extreme. Yes, it says the gal that wanted to, like, limit magazine sizes and limit the type of guns that people could access. And said Wednesday she intends to question the nominee about them when he appears before the Senate. Of course she does, because that's like her staple issue is gun rights, or gun control in her case. The two Republican-appointed judges in the majority of the 2011 appellate panel said that D.C. laws were consistent with the Supreme Court's 2008 decision in District of Columbia v. Heller. That 5-4 ruling, written by then-Justice Antonin Scalia and joined by Kennedy, established an individual right to possess a gun in the home for lawful purposes such as self-defense. Heck yeah. The decision said that Second Amendment rights are not limited and that certain restrictions are permissible. Yeah, certain restrictions like checking for a criminal background and so on and so forth, including bans on dangerous and unusual weapons. Dangerous and unusual weapons, that kind of depends on how you view it. I mean, you're talking about range, you're talking about spread of fire, rate of fire, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So anyway, as an appellate judge, Kavanaugh is bound by Supreme Court precedent. As a justice, he would be freer to vote to alter it based on his interpretation of the Second Amendment. Yeah, I mean, I know that Neil Gorsuch was touted about as to be an originalist, but I haven't heard Kavanaugh be yet defined as an originalist and a literalist when it comes to the interpretation of law and the Constitution and so on and so forth.
what's your take on that? Like, if someone's a literalist or someone that's like is in favor of a strict interpretation of the Constitution, I generally tend to sympathize with that. I think that,
No. I do think that is how that you should rule on law. Like, don't try to
Yeah.
read in between the lines and pull these mental gymnastics and so on and so forth.
yeah, like
Who
there's some part,
knows? Who
yeah.
knows? They banned bump stocks for fuck's sake, said Brett Kavanaugh in chat. Sorry, go on, us man.
Yeah, like I mean, in some cases, it's like there are some things where it's kind of vague-ish, or it's kind of strange, just what like certain parts could mean. Like me and Sparky on our immigration discussion, we're kind of trying to understand what was happening with the whole the 14th Amendment on immigration and whether or not it does apply to undocumented people or not.
All right. The issue looms large before the November 6th congressional elections, when control of the Senate is up for grabs, and with it, the authority to confirm or reject future nominees to the Supreme Court. The Supreme, this is kind of the same. I mean, Republicans are kind of in the same field as Democrats were in 2016, where they were all like, we need to get our guy appointed in as soon as possible, and so on and so forth.
Well,
and in my opinion, for people that complain about how the Republicans were kept on denying Obama the ability to get his own judge in place, I have yet to hear the constitutional argument as to how that is unconstitutional for them to do it. I mean, for Pete's sake, Republicans are not obligated to go with Obama's every rule and call when it comes to governing and whatnot. Like, it just annoys the ever-living shit out of me when lockstep Democrats and other leftists complain about that circumstance. Sorry?
Yeah, no worries. Like, here's the thing. I didn't necessarily like the obstructionism that did happen during Obama's presidency, but let's be honest, if the Democrats had control of the House and the Senate, they'd do the same thing. And I think they're going to be trying to do the same thing if they can find a way to gain a majority of the House and Senate to block the nomination, the confirmation of Kavanaugh's investment into the Supreme Court. Like, honestly, right. I think they're both guilty, but I didn't like the idea of doing the same thing the Republicans did. It's like don't get down to their level, just be a little better than them in terms of how to act.
Red Feather says it happens with every president. Yeah, exactly my point.
Yeah, so, I hate the obstructionism when people do that.
Although it is kind of a strategic move when it comes to the game of politics and so on and so forth. I mean, I can't say that I hate it. I just take it on a case-by-case basis, honestly.
Well, sure.
So anyway, excuse me, bit of gas there.
You've been doing that all stream. Go ahead.
I've been doing that all stream? Well, sorry.
Yeah, I can hear it. No worries.
Anyway, the Supreme Court last heard arguments and ruled in a Second Amendment case in 2010 when it extended Heller's gun protections to state and local governments and ruling that Chicago couldn't ban possession of a handgun in the home. Since then, the justices have turned away at least 15 constitutional gun rights cases, including several appeals that sought the right to carry a weapon in public and challenged bans on semi-automatic assault rifles. Semi-automatic assault rifles, I mean, for it to be full automatic is kind of a key factor to classify something as an assault rifle, which that is something that I also have to have a one-on-one discussion with Cult of Ham on, because I honestly don't understand his appeal to AR-15s and M4s are in the same family of rifles, so therefore AR-15s are assault rifles, and just so on and so forth. At least that's how I read his arguments. I don't mean to
just rewatch the debate he did with Sircon and Crusader.
I watched most of that debate. I don't know. I almost feel like that he might have wanted me to participate in that stream, despite whether or not it would have been a 3-to-1 debate or not. But that was the main reason why I did not want to participate. I did not want to overwhelm Cult of Ham. I would have to ask him that one-on-one.
Yeah, I prefer when the debate is even split, where it's 1-on-1, 2-on-2, or whatever. I don't like where they're like it's either a plurality of one side or they're an overwhelming majority of the participants in the stream are one side or the other. Like, being the moderator, it was just I don't know. I wish I would have handled that stream differently. But
although to be fair, that's kind of what I did with Frederick Voltaire Bastiat. But on the other hand, he kind of stated that he wanted that to happen.
Circumstance.
He wanted that circumstance. Red Feather also says in the chat, and Red Feather, by the way, I would like to thank you a lot for sticking around in the chat for so long. I mean, it's been a while since I had somebody stick around this long. Well, I say screw them playing video games with normal people's lives, sorry. Red Feather says, well, I say screw them playing games with normal people's lives. Majority don't get 2 or 3 houses and an extremely inflated salary for doing their blue-collar jobs, while most congressional people act based on who is giving them the most money's interests. Well, maybe me saying political game was a bit of a wrong terminology for me to put out there, so my bad. A 4th vote. A Kavanaugh could tip the balance, potentially giving the court the necessary 4th vote to take up a case, as well as a 5th vote to overturn restrictions and extend the constitutional protections. A Justice Kavanaugh will likely shift the court to the right on gun issues, and on a lot of other issues, probably. LOL, video is automatic, says Red Feather. Okay. A Justice Kavanaugh, Kavanaugh has a very aggressive view on gun rights, one that's very hostile to gun control. Yeah, because the guy has his own principles. Of course he would be. Said Adam Winkler, a professor at the UCLA School of Law and author of the 2011 book Gunfight, The Battle Over the Right to Bear Arms in America. Trump's first Supreme Court appointee, Justice Neil Gorsuch, indicated last year he would bolster the Second Amendment. He joined Justice Clarence Thomas in saying the court should have scrutinized the San Diego County policy that required people to show that it was necessary to carry a concealed handgun outside the home. For those of us who work in marbled halls, guarded constantly by a vigilant and dedicated dedicated police force, the guarantees of the Second Amendment might seem antiquated and superfluous, if I can English. Thomas wrote for himself and Gorsuch, but the framers made a clear choice. They reserved the right to bear arms for self-defense. Yeah, as said by Thomas Jefferson. I cannot remember the exact quote, but he said that protections of the people's liberties. How can a person's? Oh, damn it! I read it in my video that was in response to Kyle Kulinski on the Second Amendment. It was like the main one that I was touting about. I would have to look back on the video again to know exactly what Thomas Jefferson said. But anyway, assault weapon bans. 2 other members of the court, Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Samuel Alito, were in the 5-justice majority when the court ruled in 2008 that the Second Amendment protects individual gun rights. Winkler said Kavanaugh could provide the 4th vote necessary to take up a case. It seems pretty clear that Justice Kennedy was not a vote for cert. Winkler said, using a term for granting review, it seems pretty clear that Judge Kavanaugh would be a vote for cert. About 8 states, including California and New York, bar most people from carrying weapons in public. Those 2 are also among the 7 states that bar semi-automatic assault rifles. Sorry, what do you say?
Oh, imagine how pissed people in those states are going to be if the Supreme Court struck down those bans.
Yeah. Some prominent conservatives believe it's only a matter of time before the Supreme Court reviews a challenge seeking to invalidate those types of gun control laws. It'll be an issue that will be back before the Supreme Court, said Senator John Kennedy, a Louisiana Republican.
John Kennedy.
Article.
Yeah. That's interesting, having the same name as a president, almost.
Oh, I just noticed that. Damn.
Yeah. If he becomes president, we all know what's going to happen then.
Yeah, you're going to have a hard time differentiating the presidents like people have with differentiating H. Bush and W. Bush.
Yeah, just like some people don't know that there's John Adams and John Quincy Adams, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, William Henry Harrison, and Benjamin Harrison. Sometimes they just see the last name and they think, oh, they served 2 non-consecutive terms. It's like, no, you fucking moron. They're just from the same family.
Okay, so I think I'm going to definitely make this the last article that I read because it is getting late and I have to like get going soon after this to my birthday party. Sorry, but I'm gonna have to like save you for some other time. CNS News.
Oh, it's your birthday?
No. Somebody else's birthday. It's not my birthday. I'm celebrating a cousin's birthday today.
Oh, I thought it was your birthday. I was gonna be like, oh, you're a little older.
No.
You're like, oh, well, whenever your birthday is, happy birthday, Darkon.
Oh God, I feel stupid now. Kavanaugh on abortion. Speech gives evidence of where he'd stand on Roe v. Wade. Oh boy, tension is in the air. You have a moderate pro-choicer, S-Man speaks, and a moderate anti-abortionist, the dark conservatarian, in the same stream, reviewing a potential SCOTUS nominee's positions on abortion and the pinnacle ruling on abortion, that being Roe v. Wade. How will this turn out? So anyway.
Oh Lord.
As I was saying, but I want to comment on this article. Actually, I hear that Bloomberg is typically a leftist. Oh, excuse me. I hear that Bloomberg is typically a leftist news site or blog site or whatever. But I like the fact that this particular article was remaining objective by just letting the senators and other political officials do the talking for the writer instead of the writer putting in too much of his own opinion. So that's good on them. Anyway, this is from San Francisco Chronicle, and I find it odd that this person has the same way of writing as the New York Times. So that kind of makes me edgy already. Just knowing that they have the same, writing as the New York Times, and we all know how uncredible New York Times is. Anyway, Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh hasn't said publicly whether he would vote to overturn Roe v. Wade, the 1973 ruling that declared a constitutional right to abortion. But a speech he gave to a conservative group 10 months ago appears to be the strongest evidence so far of Kavanaugh's views on the issue. Not surprisingly, those views look consistent with President Trump's promise as a candidate to appoint justices who would automatically overturn Roe. Groups on both sides of the issue are circulating the speech, and it's likely to come up at the Senate confirmation hearing. And S-Man is already reeing in his head. Sorry.
Oh, Lord.
I couldn't know myself. In 2006, Kavanaugh assured senators during his confirmation hearing for a judgeship on the U.S. Court of Appeals in Washington, D.C., that he considered Roe v. Wade binding precedent that he would follow faithfully and fully, as required for judges on lower federal courts. But he shed a different light on his views of the decision last September in a speech to the American Enterprise Institute. His topic was the late Justice William Rehnquist, and Red Feather says Gesundheit in the chat. Well, thank you, Red Feather. His topic was the late Justice William Rehnquist, my first judicial hero, who had dissented from the 7-2 abortion ruling a year after President Richard Nixon appointed him to the court. Okay, so that kind of makes him slant. I don't know. I mean, he could consider him a judicial hero in different areas other than Roe v. Wade. That doesn't say a whole lot, but yeah, anyway. Red Feather asks, S-Man, have you ever read about Margaret Sanger?
Margaret Sanger. That name sounds familiar. Let me Google that
really
quickly.
The founder of Planned Parenthood.
Oh. I've not entirely looked into Margaret Sanger. No. Why? Margaret Sanger. She died in 1966. At least that's the birth control activist, sex educator, writer, nurse. She popularized the term birth control. And yes, she did. Yeah, she did found Planned Parenthood.
All right.
Why?
Red Feather asks in the chat.
Yeah, well, I'm asking why. I like to Red Feather, like.
So we'll wait for him to respond on that. Kavanaugh did not explicitly say he disagreed with Roe v. Wade and wanted it reversed, but he made it clear that he approved of Rehnquist's reasoning on issues of unenumerated rights, those not spelled out in the Constitution. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's the thing that I have to say with Roe v. Wade. I mean, how does abortion like tie in specifically with the Constitution? I mean, I cannot remember specifically, but I think it like required 50 to 80 pages worth of paper to try and rule on abortion. Roe v. Wade did. So
Really?
I mean, that's what I heard. I would have to actually Google it up to find out for certain, but I just know that it was a long ass ruling. Like, and I'm thinking to myself, man, did the judges have to pull some mental gymnastics to try and consider it constitutional or something?
Or how like honestly, I think you could do it within 10 pages or something. And I think like at some point you're like, how are you able to word this to where you need 50 pages to deal with this? Like,
All right,
I don't know.
I'm gonna Google this very quickly on my phone if I can. So take off my gloves so that I'm not as clumsy with this thing. Roe v. Wade. Okay. How long was Roe v. Wade?
As Governor Dartkhan had darts in his hand, he had a picture of the Supreme Court justices who ruled on Roe v. Wade and those who ruled in favor of it, and he threw darts at their heads.
Okay.
Personally, I'm not against abortion, just Planned Parenthood. Red Feather One says, read her quotes. It says something about eugenics, which I'm like, I think eugenics is like really fucked up in all honesty. So I'm assuming you're having me look up her quotes because the bitch is racist, right?
I think that might be part of the reasoning. How many pages is in Roe v. Wade? I'm trying to see if there's like any article that says right off the bat how many pages. Damn, I'm not getting anything. It says it right off the bat, anyways.
I think you're gonna have to look up the case decision.
I might have
there'll
to
be a PDF about it.
I might have to actually read the articles that go talking about the length of it. But if it really is a long ass reading, well then I have to say that the explicitly constitutional case for abortion is kind of weak. I mean, I think that I always talk about on a principle level when it comes to abortion, but let me lay out my legal position. I say that it should be dealt on a I say that it should be dealt more on a state basis, I think.
Leave it up to the states, okay.
I mean, especially for anything before 20 weeks.
Okay. That'd be kind of interesting if you did a video, like if you did a video reading the Supreme Court decision of Roe v. Wade, like, and I mean that'd probably be a long ass video, but that'd be like probably a very interesting one. If
God, I don't think I could put myself through the pain and boredom of that. Nobody would watch that video. Nobody.
I would. I can guarantee that. And besides, nothing you do or say is as painful. I mean, it's not painful, but even if it was, like it's like a bee sting compared to dealing with Owen's autism on private property rights, the concept of linear time, and his how much of a beta cuck he is when he tries to argue for the pro-choice opinion. And this is coming from a pro-choicer.
Red Feather, Planned Parenthood is already in violation of laws that state abortion centers and family planning centers cannot be housed in the same facility. Okay. Anyway, so continuing on with the article, because it is getting later and later. In the abortion dissent and a 1997 majority ruling from the Supreme Court upholding Washington State's ban on physician aid in dying. What do you mean physician aid in dying? As in they helped them to die, or they comfort them in death, or they help them help to prevent them from dying? I mean, I don't know. I think the terming of that is a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah.
Who decides when it is time to create a new constitutional right or to eliminate an existing constitutional right? Kavanaugh asked. The Constitution quite specifically tells us that the people decide through their elected representatives. decides when it is time to create a new or to eliminate an existing Constitution. The Constitution quite specifically tells us that the people decide through their elected representatives. Okay. He said, and I say that that would be a little bit more, I mean, me giving advice to pro-choicers. I think that that would be a more solid way of trying to rule on abortion, is if you tried to amend the Constitution to say, make an amendment that explicitly goes on the issue of terminating a fetus. Now, I would obviously disagree with that action, but I think that that would be more solid than making a ruling like this, Roe v. Wade, that is so long.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could make a shorter ruling, and I'm not even a Supreme Court justice. I think I could make a much shorter ruling arguing for what I argue for.
All right. He said Rehnquist, in his 1997 ruling, had helped to ensure that the court operates more as a court of law and less as an institution of social policy. Kavanaugh is Trump's choice announced Monday to replace Justice Anthony Kennedy, who is retiring July 31st. His speech to the American Enterprise Institute surfaced this week in online postings by advocacy groups. David Cohen, a law professor at Drexel University in Philadelphia, who helped to spread the word after reading about the speech on Twitter, said Thursday that Kavanaugh has made his position fairly clear. I think he's telling us that he thinks then Justice Rehnquist was right in Roe v. Wade, Cohen said. Every nominee swears allegiance to precedent during confirmation proceedings, and then they vote with their own views. Okay. The liberal group People for the American Way said Kavanaugh's record leaves no question about the dangerous fate of Roe v. Wade and millions of American women if he is confirmed. Liberty Counsel, a conservative Christian legal organization, praised the September speech in a statement. Well, of course, both of those groups brought up their appropriate comments on this because they disagree with each other on abortion. Judge Brett Kavanaugh exhibits the kind of judicial philosophy that everyone should embrace, said Matt Staver, the group's founder and chairman. Judges are to interpret the law, not make it. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the... I mean, abortion aside, that's kind of the thing that I have with the whole SCOTUS ruling of 2015, talking about gay marriage. I mean, the Supreme Court of the United States was kind of legislating, just putting a blanket legislation when it comes to a marriage of gay couples. I think that that should have been dealt more on a state-by-state basis as well.
Same-sex marriage, like Obergefell versus Hodge. Okay, I'm going to have to disagree with that, but in order to prevent the stream from going on for like too much longer, I'm just going to bite my tongue on that.
I mean, I'm not saying that it should definitely be repealed. I mean, I find it to be not an issue worth fighting, but still.
Yeah.
In his speech, Kavanaugh recalled that as a Yale Law School student in the late 1980s, in class after class, I stood with Rehnquist, often alone. Overall, he said Rehnquist was successful in stemming the general tide of free-willing judicial creation of unenumerated rights that were not rooted in the nation's history and tradition. The court majority in Roe v. Wade said a woman's right to decide whether to give birth was part of the constitutional right to privacy that the court had declared in a birth control case in 1965. Okay, that's before Roe v. Wade, so different issue. But Kavanaugh said Rehnquist, in his dissent, argued that any right not mentioned in the Constitution had to be rooted in the tradition or conscience of our people. So, in other words, it would have had to been a ruling based off of the morality of the populace rather than what the Constitution was saying. That's how I read that. Rehnquist found that abortion did not fall into that category, Kavanaugh said, because it had been extensively regulated through the nation's history. He explained that a law prohibiting an abortion, even where the mother's life was in jeopardy, would violate the Constitution. He explained that a law prohibiting an abortion, even where the mother's life was in jeopardy, would violate. I mean, of course, when the mother's life is in danger, I mean, nobody would hardly argue against that. But when it comes to prohibiting abortion in general, I would have to like see your argument as to how it violates the Constitution to prohibit other types of abortions
I mean,
before I'd be able to respond to that.
I think the argument can be made. It just depends on like if you jail a woman for having an abortion, or like if you're trying to ban it by jailing the women who do it or the abortion providers. Like I think they argued that it was due to I think it was actually a privacy violation or something like that. If I'm gonna have to really look into the ruling of they used myself. So anyhow,
and I want to like bring up this comment. Most pro-lifers / anti-abortionists, they're not for outright jailing, punishing, and fining pregnant women who have gone for abortions, because the general philosophy with the anti-abortion community is that mothers are pretty much as much, maybe not quite as much, but almost just as much of victims as their own child that they're bearing, and so therefore do not want them to be punished. I mean, if anything, anti-abortionists want the abortion surgeons to be punished more than anything else. But otherwise, he stated the states had the power to legislate with regard to this matter, Kavanaugh said, and that's kind of, he's kind of echoing I echoed that bit of reasoning right there just a little bit earlier. Red Feather also says in the chat, it's a tough argument. Access should not be banned because when we go back to back alley abortions, that might likely result in the mother's death anyway. Right. I mean, I'm not here to debate the whole issue of abortion. I'm trying to like tackle it on a legal perspective within this article. But if private practices wish to perform abortion, they should be permitted to do so, says Red Feather. Likewise, okay, continuing on with the article. Likewise, he said Rehnquist concluded in the 1997 ruling on physician assistance in dying that no such right had been established in the nation's history or tradition. Yeah, and I say despite of whether or not the right to suicide or whatever that is, that it should be allowed.
I already know where I stand, and I actually have to. I have to agree with Humane. Like fundamentally, I know where I stand, but in practice, I know it's different. But anyhow,
no, right. I mean, didn't Humane Minds say that? I mean, didn't he espouse something along the lines of saying that legally he's pro-choice or something?
I can't remember. I was talking about assisted suicide or suicide in general. Like,
no.
Like that's where I mean I was actually stunned he said what he said, but his reasoning it resonated with me. But like in practice I wouldn't go with it, but fundamentally I could agree.
So, I'm sorry. So you was making that comment of his legal versus moral stance. You was talking about his stance on a suicide and assisted suicide and not abortion.
Yeah, I think Humane is pro-life on abortion. No, it's fine.
Anyway, even a first-year law student could tell you that the 1997 ruling's approach to unenumerated rights was not consistent with the approach of the abortion cases, such as Roe v. Wade and a 1992 ruling that largely upheld it, Kavanaugh said. He made it clear that he preferred Rehnquist's approach. As an appeals court judge, Kavanaugh dissented last fall when his court allowed a 17-year-old undocumented immigrant to leave federal custody and have an abortion. Okay. So there's a plus for you, S-Man. Wait, what?
What?
So sorry, I'm trying to like comprehend what the article said here. Let's reread that. As an appeals court judge, Kavanaugh dissented last fall when his court allowed a 17-year-old undocumented immigrant to leave federal custody and have an abortion. Okay, no. So he was against that practice right there, not for it. My bad.
Yeah, well, I'm going to honestly, I mean, I can get why maybe he dissented, but it's like, I mean, I can't blame teens for having abortions, but whatever. He said that immigration officials should have been allowed to keep her confined until they found a suitable sponsor to care for her, and accused the court majority of establishing a new right of immediate abortion on demand for unauthorized immigrants. And I already know I'm going to strongly disagree here, although like I can see where he comes from, but in practice, like at the end of the day, I would have to disagree here with Kavanaugh that, you know, I don't think the courts should decide if like I think it was, you know, I get why maybe he didn't like the idea of the 17-year-old undocumented immigrant but having an abortion, but I think I think it was more I think it was done for tactical reasons, but whatever.
I'm gonna let you read the last paragraph.
Okay, and okay. Although he hadn't stated an intention to overrule Roe v. Wade, he is sure to be questioned about the issue at his confirmation hearing. One Republican sponsor, Susan Collins,
Senator, not sponsor.
One Republican senator, Susan Collins of Maine, has said she would not support a nominee who would vote to overturn the abortion ruling. And that's okay. I find it so interesting when I come across those type of conservatives and Republicans. Like, I know 2 conservative Republicans who thought Ronald Reagan was their top 3 presidents, and they said they would oppose overturning Roe v. Wade. And now with that article out of the way, I guess that's the end of the podcast for today. And thanks for having me on, DarkCon.
And probably the last one for a little while at least. So yeah, I'm going to make a video talking about what's going on tomorrow, I think.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It's going to be like a vlog video, but yeah.
Yeah.
You'll know about tomorrow.
Yeah. I'm hopefully everything's going to be going well for you in that time while you're gone. You know, but right. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, and thanks to everyone who watched, especially Red Feather One, who watched like a huge majority of the stream.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare these days that I get somebody like watching a majority of my streams. My streams have been doing lax in these later episodes. Like there was like a time, like around the time of the Parkland shooting and the Maryland shooting, right around the time that I was talking about that, they were more viewed. My streams were more well viewed. Like I had like, I don't know, 3 to 4 people commenting in the chat and watching while I was talking about the possibility of Nick Cruz getting a death sentence. And yeah, I mean, there was Brandon, JJ, someone else I can't remember the name, and Loudmouth quickly chimed in as well. But nowadays, it seems that most of my streams are like having a very low population with them. It's kind of sad.
Is that like is it leaving you rather unmotivated, would you say?
To a certain extent. I mean, I'm feeling a lot like Mr. Dapperton. Of course, I will talk about it more in my video tomorrow. But yeah.
That's kind of why, like that's kind of why people like even you've noticed like I've kind of my presence on here is kind of dipped a little bit. It's kind of the same reason, but
yeah, you had like 476 subscribers at one point, and then you like dipped to like 469, 470, 471. Like you're just staying stagnant within that range. I mean, I think it's because of Milo Yiannopoulos video how you lost a good portion of subscribers.
Like I think I just lost around 7 or 8, and I'm like, okay, what I said about Milo Yiannopoulos wasn't entirely unreasonable. Like honestly. Like, and also, I mean, with people like that have those type of views, I say good riddance. Honestly, I think Milo Yiannopoulos is a shitty person, so it didn't really bother me if those people left.
Red Brother says in the chat, sorry to bring it up again, but Planned Parenthood practices are strange. They profit from abortions while they claim it is only like 3% of their services. I don't know. I think you're kind of like making it sound maybe a little bit too black and white, Red Feather, with the statement that you made right there, but I would have to research more into that. And he also says, do you tweet out the link? Occasionally I do. I mean, I have been kind of doing it less and less. But yeah, I feel like I'm suffering in the same way that Mr. Dapperton has. I mean, he doesn't get his money's worth of views. I mean, to heck with growing my channel. I at least want to get my money's worth of views, like get 80 to 100 views for every fully edited out response video that I make, and like get 30 to 50 views for every live stream that I get. I mean, It
Yeah.
sounds like I'm being entitled right now, but it's just rather discouraging when I have all these subscribers that are just subscribed to my channel, but they don't actually watch this shit, because I know that I have some ghost subscribers. It's just disheartening. So.
Yeah, that's kind of a shame. There was this one who used to comment regularly a few years ago, and she was a pro-lifer, so you'd probably be good buddies with her. But she just, I mean, I understand in her case why she's ghosted, but it's kind of sad because it's like, when you have a long-time subscriber like that. And if you notice, like, there was actually one point where for a few weeks I did no videos except for S-Man Live, and yeah, I kind of was like, oh, I've done that before. And sometimes I feel like I might end up heading back there. I don't know. But after our debate discussion and then a debate I think I might have with Lapis on capital punishment and a debate discussion with Conundrum, I'm thinking I'm going to dip, except maybe for some S-Man Live episodes, if that. I don't know. But that's something I'm going to have to debate in my own head after a while. But thank you for having me on for this episode of Strike Force. I've always liked these. I keep mine under the 80-minute mark, and Darkon's like, fuck the 80-minute mark. I'm more you're more liberal with how long these streams go, and I actually have to admire that.
Anyway, so to sum up this episode of Strike Force, first we read about the Trump economy, and it's so, especially in comparison to other presidents. And we reviewed Judge Brett Kavanaugh possibly becoming a Supreme Court judge. And I have to say, overall, I'm approving. Good for Trump.
I lean towards approve, although I would be hesitant with giving the vote depending on his stance on abortion. But I think I would vote to confirm. But yeah.
That's how I feel about Kavanaugh. I will put all the links for all these articles if any of you want to read them for yourself, in the description box below and post of this. So thanks everybody for watching. Brandon, JJ, Red Feather, everyone else, thank you for joining us, man. Thank you, SB, if you're out there, for joining us along as well. And like I said, I'll make a video talking about the state of my channel more in depth and more condensed as well. Like the video will be a whole lot shorter. Talking about the state of my channel and the future of it tomorrow. I'll make that video tomorrow. So anyway, I am Zach, the Dark Conservatarian. This has been my co-host S-Man Speaks of S-Man Speaks. And this is Strike Force. See you later. God bless.
America.